Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong Un have met face-to-face for the first time. The summit in the far eastern city of Vladivostok offered a chance for Pyongyang to gain support from Moscow, especially when it comes to ending international sanctions imposed over North Korea's nuclear program. Just 2 months ago, a summit with U.S. President Donald Trump broke down over that topic. Well, before Kim and Putin moved to a private meeting, they talked about one of their major points of discussion, peace on the Korean Peninsula.
I'm sure that your visit to Russia today will contribute to the development of Russian-North Korean bilateral relations and help us to understand better how we can settle the situation on the Korean Peninsula, what we can do together, and what Russia can do to support these positive processes that are happening now.
I also wanted to say that now the situation on the Korean Peninsula has great interest for global society, and I hope that our talks will be important to assess the situation, exchange opinions on the situation, and together address these issues.
Well, for more now, let's bring in Emily Sherwin, DW's correspondent in Moscow, and joining us from Seoul, South Korea, is journalist Kelly Kasulis. Emily, let's start with you. The Russian and North Korean leaders have been talking. I understand they've finished their talks now. How did they get along?
Well, they have had one-on-one talks and broader negotiations as well. And coming out of their one-on-one meeting, both struck a rather positive tone. Putin called the talks detailed, and Kim even called them meaningful. And both mentioned that they had discussed denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. They also emphasized the historic ties that the two countries have, stretching back to when the Soviet Union was North Korea's main ally, and they also said that they would continue talking. Now, this is the first meeting between the two leaders, and apparently there will be no written statements or declarations after this meeting, so it's unlikely that we can really expect any big breakthroughs today, but the two leaders are sizing each other up for the first time, as it were.
Kelly, how does this meeting look from the Korean perspective? Can you tell us what Kim Jong Un wanted out of this meeting with Vladimir Putin?
It really seems like Kim Jong Un wanted to broaden his international alliances, especially as he's seeking to kind of lighten economic pressure on his country. North Korea has been, suffering a lot under the sanctions regime, and especially after the summit in Vietnam did not go as planned, it really seems like he's looking for some other solutions when there is no real end in sight. And I think North Korea also wants to signal to the United States that it's not an isolated country, as the U.S. often makes it out to be, and that it has other partners that it could work with besides the U.S. or South Korea in terms of, building its economy and seeking world peace.
Emily, what is Russia's position on North Korea's controversial missile development and nuclear programs?
Well, Russia, of course, wants denuclearization as well. Let's not forget that Russia shares a land border with North Korea. They really want stability on the Korean Peninsula. They want talks to keep going. They don't want a potentially nuclear conflict on their borders, and they want to broaden talks, including China as well. Russia has been working rather closely with China. In fact, Putin will be traveling to Beijing for an economic forum just after this talk with Kim, so potentially North Korea will be on the agenda there as well. But on the whole, Russia's rhetoric has been softer when it comes to North Korea's nuclear program than the rhetoric we've seen from many Western countries, including the U.S. They have called for to ease international sanctions. In general, Russia disapproves of sanctions, international sanctions. They think that it's a bad policy, and instead they think that talks with North Korea should continue to solve this crisis.
Kelly, with Russia getting involved here perhaps to some degree, what potential do you see for breaking the deadlock on denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula?
Right now, I don't see a whole lot of potential, although it's hard to tell because there are no statements or declarations being signed from this summit today. A lot of people are saying that Russia doesn't have a whole lot of leverage in the denuclearization process. I think that's somewhat true. It is possible that this sends the message that, Trump needs to get on his game plan and meet with Kim Jong Un again after the failed summit in Vietnam. It certainly doesn't send a great message to the United States. And the other thing is Russia doesn't have to necessarily cooperate with economic sanctions, right? Sanctions are only as good as they are enforced. So, in that sense, there is a potential that a stronger relationship between North Korea and Russia could propel this denuclearization process one way or another, for better or for worse.
Kelly Kasulis in Seoul there, and Emily Sherwin in Moscow. Thank you very much to you both.
Thank you.